The little girl's hands were shaking as she grabbed the sleeve of a stranger outside the hospital. "Please, those men won't let my mum in," she cried, her voice breaking. "She can't breathe, she's dying." Minutes later, black luxury cars rolled up to the emergency entrance. Men in dark suits stepped out. And when the hospital staff saw who was walking toward the doors, their faces turned pale. Because the most feared and powerful man in the city had just come for one poor single mother. And what he did next, no one there would ever forget. If stories about love, justice, and the quiet power of kindness touch your heart, take a moment to subscribe. There's a new story waiting for you every day. It was a cold Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, the kind of morning where the wind cut through thin clothes and reminded you exactly how hard life could be. 8-year-old Lily Harper stood outside the emergency entrance of St. Matthew's Medical Center, her small fingers wrapped tightly around her mother's worn coat. Her mother, Sarah, leaned heavily against the wall, her face pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. "Mom, we're here," Lily whispered, her voice trembling but trying to sound brave. "You're gonna be okay. They'll help you." Sarah forced a weak smile, but her eyes told a different story. She had been coughing for weeks. The pain in her chest had grown worse each day. But when you worked 2 cleaning jobs and barely made rent, doctors were a luxury you couldn't afford. Until that morning, when she collapsed in their tiny apartment. Inside the glass doors, nurses and patients moved quickly through bright hallways filled with warmth and safety. Outside, Lily and her mother stood in the cold. They walked slowly toward the reception desk. "Please," Lily said as she stood on her toes, barely reaching the counter. "My mom is really sick." The receptionist looked up, her expression tired but polite. "Insurance card?" she asked. Sarah shook her head weakly. I don't have one. But I can pay something. I work. I just need a doctor to look at me." The woman's polite expression faded into something colder. "Ma'am, without insurance or a deposit, we can't admit you for non-life-threatening conditions." Sarah's breathing hitched painfully. "I can't breathe," she whispered. The receptionist sighed, clearly overwhelmed. "You'll need to go to the public clinic 2 miles from here. They open at 9. It was 7:20 in the morning. Outside, the wind blew harder. Lily wrapped her arms around her mother's waist as Sarah sank slowly onto a bench near the entrance. "Mom, we'll wait," Lily said quickly. "We'll wait till 9. I won't let you fall." Sarah's hand trembled as she brushed Lily's hair back. "You shouldn't have to take care of me like this," she whispered. But Lily had been taking care of her for years. Since her father left. Since the rent notices started piling up. Since childhood became something she didn't really have time for anymore. Across the street, a line of black luxury cars began to pull up outside the private entrance of the hospital. Security guards straightened immediately. Nurses rushed toward the doors. Because someone important had arrived. Inside the first car sat Victor Romano. At 58, Victor was one of the richest men in Illinois. Officially, he owned construction companies, shipping businesses, and real estate across 3 states. Unofficially, people said his power ran deeper than any contract. Some called him a businessman. Others called him something else. Victor stepped out of the car slowly, his tailored coat shielding him from the wind. His face was calm, unreadable, the kind of face that had seen both success and loss. Beside him walked his assistant. "Your grandson's surgery is scheduled for 8, the assistant said quietly. "The doctors are ready." Victor nodded, but his eyes moved across the street for just a moment. That's when he saw her. A small girl, standing in the cold, holding a woman who looked like she might collapse at any second. He paused. "Sir?" the assistant asked. Victor didn't answer. Across the street, Sarah tried to stand again, but her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, gasping, her breath coming in sharp, painful bursts. "Mom!" Lily cried, her voice rising in panic. People walked past them. Some glanced. Most didn't stop. Lily looked toward the hospital doors. Security guards stood near the entrance, focused on the arriving VIP. She ran toward them. "Please!" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "Those men won't let my mum in. She can't breathe. Please help us." One guard stepped forward, blocking her path gently but firmly. "Sweetheart, you need to go back to your parent." "They said we need money," Lily sobbed. "We don't have money." "But she's dying." The guard hesitated, but orders were orders. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Behind him, the private entrance doors opened. Victor Romano stepped inside, but the sound of a child crying carried across the polished floor. He stopped. Slowly, he turned his head. Through the glass, he saw the little girl again. Her hands pressed against the door. Her face streaked with tears. And behind her, her mother lying on the cold concrete, barely moving. Victor's expression changed. Not fear. Not anger. Something older. Something that came from a memory he had spent 30 years trying to forget. He turned to his assistant. "Delay the surgery prep," he said. The assistant blinked in surprise. "Sir? Your grandson." Victor was already walking back toward the doors. Outside, Lily was still crying, her small voice growing weaker as she knelt beside her mother. "Mom, please wake up," she whispered. "I'm right here. I won't leave you." The glass doors opened behind her. Heavy footsteps approached. The security guards straightened immediately. Because the most powerful man in the city was walking straight toward the poor little girl no one else had helped. And when Victor Romano looked down at her tear-filled eyes, he froze. Because in that moment, he wasn't seeing Lily. He was seeing someone from his past. Someone he had failed. Someone he had lost. And this time, he wasn't going to walk away again. Victor Romano slowly lowered himself to one knee in front of the little girl. Up close, he could see how thin her jacket was. The sleeves were too short. The zipper was broken. Her small hands were red from the cold. But it was her eyes that held him. Fear. Desperation. And a kind of courage no child should ever have to carry. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The security guards exchanged nervous glances. No one spoke to Victor Romano like this. No one saw him kneel. The girl wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Lily," she whispered. "My mom. She can't breathe. They won't let her in." Victor's gaze shifted to Sarah. She was lying on her side now, her chest rising in short, shallow bursts. Each breath sounded like it hurt. Her lips had turned a faint shade of blue. He stood up immediately. "She needs oxygen." "Now," he said. One of the guards hesitated. "Sir, admissions said." Victor didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Now." Within seconds, the tone around them changed. The same staff who had been overwhelmed and distant moments ago were suddenly moving quickly. A nurse rushed out with a wheelchair. Another brought a portable oxygen tank. Lily stepped back, her eyes wide as strangers surrounded her mother. "It's okay," Victor said softly. "They're going to help her." Sarah barely seemed conscious as the oxygen mask was placed over her face. Her body trembled slightly as she was lifted into the chair. The nurse glanced at the receptionist inside. "ER priority," she said. No one asked about insurance this time. The doors opened wide. And for the first time that morning, Sarah Harper was taken inside the hospital. Lily stood frozen for a moment, watching the wheelchair disappear down the hallway. Then panic hit her again. "Wait. I need to go with her," she cried, running toward the doors. She stopped suddenly when she realized she was alone outside. Victor was still standing behind her. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Adults had walked past her all morning. Some had looked sorry. Most had looked busy. But this man hadn't walked away. Can I go in?" she asked, her voice small again. Victor nodded. "Of course you can." He held the door open for her. As Lily ran inside, he followed at a slower pace. Inside the emergency corridor, doctors were already examining Sarah. Monitors beeped softly. Nurses moved with quiet urgency. Lily rushed to her mother's side, grabbing her hand. "I'm here, Mom. I didn't leave." Sarah's eyes fluttered open just enough to see her daughter. Even through the mask, relief showed in her expression. Victor stood a few feet away, watching. His assistant stepped closer, speaking quietly. "Sir, your grandson's surgical team is waiting." Victor didn't look away from the scene. "Tell them to proceed. I'll join them after the briefing." The assistant hesitated. "They'll want your consent in person." Victor finally turned. "They have it." The tone in his voice ended the conversation. Minutes passed. A doctor approached, reviewing the monitor. "Severe pneumonia," he said to the nurse. "Low oxygen saturation. She's been untreated for a while." "Will she be okay?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. The doctor paused, noticing her for the first time. Then he looked at Victor, clearly recognizing him. "With treatment, she has a strong chance," he said carefully. "But she'll need to stay several days. Maybe longer." Lily nodded quickly. "That's okay. We'll stay." The doctor hesitated again. Victor spoke before he could. "She'll receive whatever treatment she needs." The doctor gave a short nod. "Yes, sir." When he walked away, Lily turned to Victor. Her face was still tear-streaked, but something new was there now. "Hope." "Thank you," she said. 2 simple words. But Victor didn't answer right away. Because as he looked at her, the past was pressing harder against his chest. A hospital hallway. Another child. Another small hand reaching for someone who didn't come. He swallowed slowly. "You did the right thing," he finally said. "You didn't give up." Lily nodded. "I promised her," she said. "It's just us." The words hit him harder than he expected. Just us. He had heard those words once before. From a woman who had believed him, trusted him, waited for him. And he hadn't come back in time. Across the room, a nurse approached with a clipboard. "Sir, admissions paperwork," she said carefully. "We'll need insurance details or a payment authorization." Victor took the clipboard without looking at it. "Full coverage," he said, signing his name. "Private room when she's stable. All medications approved." The nurse blinked, then nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Lily watched the exchange quietly. After the nurse left, she tugged gently on Victor's coat. "You don't have to pay," she said softly. "I can help clean. My mom cleans houses. I'm good at folding things." For a moment, Victor couldn't speak. The offer wasn't childish. It was serious. Responsible. The kind of offer made by someone who had grown up too fast. He crouched slightly so they were eye level. "You don't owe me anything, Lily." She studied his face, trying to understand. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. It was a simple question. But the answer lived 30 years in the past. Victor looked toward Sarah, then back at Lily. "Because a long time ago," he said quietly, "someone needed help, and I wasn't there." Lily didn't fully understand. But she nodded anyway. In the next room, a monitor suddenly beeped faster. Nurses moved quickly around Sarah's bed. The doctor's voice grew sharper. Victor's expression tightened as Lily's small hand slowly reached for his. And this time, he didn't pull away. The sudden rush of movement around Sarah's bed made the air feel heavy. The monitor's steady rhythm had turned sharp and uneven. Nurses leaned in, adjusting the oxygen flow, checking her pulse, speaking in low, urgent voices that tried to stay calm but couldn't quite hide the tension. Lily's fingers tightened around Victor's hand. Is she going to die?" she whispered. Victor didn't answer right away. He watched the doctor step closer, his face focused, professional, but serious. "No," Victor said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "They're helping her. Your mom's strong." Lily nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on the bed. "Mom always says we don't quit," she murmured. "Even when it's hard." The doctor gave a short instruction, and a nurse increased the oxygen again. Slowly, the frantic beeping softened. The sharp spikes on the monitor began to even out. After a long moment, the doctor stepped back. "She's stabilizing," he said. The words seemed to release the breath Lily had been holding all morning. Her shoulders dropped, and she leaned slightly against Victor without even realizing it. "Thank you, God," she whispered. Victor felt something tighten in his chest. Faith. Simple. Quiet. Unshaken. He hadn't prayed in years. A nurse approached them gently. "We're moving her to a monitored room," she said to Lily. "You can come with us." Lily nodded quickly, but before she followed, she looked up at Victor. "You're coming too, right?" The question caught him off guard. For a man who commanded boardrooms, controlled companies, and had people waiting for his decisions every minute of the day, he suddenly found himself hesitating over the answer to an 8-year-old girl. "Yes," he said. "I'm here." They walked beside the moving bed as Sarah was wheeled down the quieter hallway. Inside the new room, the lights were softer. The machines were fewer. The tension eased just a little. Sarah was still unconscious, her breathing now steady behind the oxygen mask. Lily climbed carefully onto the chair beside the bed and took her mother's hand again. "I'm right here," she whispered. Victor stood near the window, giving her space. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars rushed by. People hurried to work. Life went on, unaware that for one small family, everything had almost ended that morning. His phone vibrated. His assistant's name lit the screen. Victor stepped into the hallway before answering. "Sir, the surgical team is asking for you again," the assistant said. "Your grandson is being prepped. They're concerned." Victor closed his eyes briefly. For the first time that day, the weight of his own family pulled at him. "How long?" he asked. 30 minutes before anesthesia." Victor looked through the small glass panel into Sarah's room. Lily sat very still, holding her mother's hand with both of hers, her lips moving quietly as if she were praying. "I'll be there," Victor said. He ended the call but didn't move right away. When he stepped back inside, Lily looked up. "Are you leaving?" she asked. There was no accusation in her voice, just fear. Victor walked closer. "I have to check on my grandson," he said gently. "He's having surgery today." Lily nodded slowly. "Is he sick?" "Yes." She thought for a moment. "I'll pray for him too," she said. "I'm good at that. Mom says God listens to kids more." Victor almost smiled. "Thank you," he said quietly. He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and placed a small card on the table beside her. "If you need anything," he said, "anything at all, tell the nurse to call that number. Someone will come immediately." Lily looked at the card but didn't touch it. "Are you coming back?" she asked. Victor met her eyes. Yes. This time, he meant it. He turned and walked out. The hallway felt longer than before. 4 years, Victor Romano had lived a life built on control, power, and distance. Problems were solved with decisions. People were managed through systems. But that small hand holding his earlier, that had shaken something loose. In the surgical waiting area, the atmosphere was quiet and tense. His daughter-in-law stood when she saw him. "You're late," she said softly, worry and exhaustion lining her face. "How is he?" Victor asked. "They're optimistic," she said. "But it's his heart, Victor. He's only 9. Victor placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's strong," he said. But as he sat down, his mind drifted. Not to business. Not to power. To a little girl sitting beside a hospital bed, praying for someone else's child. Across the hospital, time moved slowly in Sarah's room. Lily watched every small change in her mother's face. Every breath. Every movement. A nurse came in to adjust the 4. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "have you eaten today?" Lily shook her head. "I'm okay." The nurse hesitated, then left quietly. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. A hospital staff member stepped in, carrying a tray. Sandwich. Juice. Warm soup. "For Lily," the woman said with a smile. "Courtesy of Mr. Romano." Lily's eyes widened. She hadn't eaten since the night before. "Thank you," she whispered. As she ate slowly beside the bed, she kept one hand resting on her mother's arm. Across the hall, 2 hospital administrators stood speaking in low voices. "Do you know who that patient is?" one asked. "Charity case?" The other shook his head. "No. She's the reason Victor Romano personally authorized emergency coverage." They exchanged a look. Because when a man like Victor Romano got personally involved, it usually meant something bigger was happening. Back in the surgical waiting room, a doctor approached Victor. "The procedure has started," he said. "It will take several hours." Victor nodded. As the doctor walked away, his phone buzzed again. A new message. From hospital administration. Patient. Sarah Harper. Condition. Severe pneumonia. Extended treatment required. Estimated cost. High 6 figures. Victor read the number. Then, without hesitation, he replied with 2 words. Approved. Private care. He set the phone down. But just as he leaned back, another message appeared on the screen. Not from the hospital. From his security team. Background check completed. Subject, Sarah Harper. Victor's expression changed as he opened the file. Because the first line didn't list medical history. It listed a name. And that name was someone Victor Romano had buried in his past 30 years ago. Victor stared at the name for a long time. The sounds of the waiting room faded. The quiet footsteps, the distant voices, the soft hum of hospital machines, all of it slipped into the background. Because the name on the screen didn't belong to the present. It belonged to a life he had tried to leave behind. He read the line again, slower this time. Next of kin, deceased, Michael Harper. Victor's hand tightened around the phone. Harper. The same last name. The message continued with basic details. Employment history. Address in a low-income neighborhood. No insurance. Single parent. But Victor wasn't reading the report anymore. His mind had already gone back 30 years. A small apartment. A young man with nothing but ambition. A woman who believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. Her name had been Anna Harper. Michael's older sister. Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Anna had been the only person who knew him before the money, before the power, before the world started calling him dangerous instead of hungry. She had worked 2 jobs to help him finish school. She had sold her mother's jewelry so he could start his first business. And when the business began to grow, when bigger opportunities came with bigger risks. Victor had chosen ambition. He had promised her he would come back. But success moved fast. The calls became fewer. The visits stopped. The life he was building didn't have room for the people who reminded him where he came from. By the time he went back to find her, she was already gone. Cancer. Late diagnosis. No insurance. No one to push her through the system. He had paid for the funeral. But money came too late for the only person who had ever loved him without expecting anything in return. Victor swallowed hard. Michael Harper. Her nephew. Which meant... He opened the file again and scrolled. Child, Lily Harper. Father, unknown. Mother, Sarah Harper, spouse of Michael Harper, deceased, construction accident, 6 years prior. Victor leaned back slowly. Anna's family. Struggling. Working. Fighting alone. Just like she had. Across the hospital, Lily had finished her soup. She carefully folded the napkin, then climbed back onto the chair beside the bed. Her mother hadn't woken up yet. The machines showed steady numbers, but the stillness was heavy. Lily leaned closer. "Mom," she whispered softly, "I met a nice man today. He helped us." She hesitated. "I think God sent him." Her small fingers brushed Sarah's hand. "You always say help comes when you don't give up." The door opened quietly. A nurse stepped in, checking the monitors. "You're doing great," she told Lily. "She's responding well to treatment." "Will she wake up soon?" Lily asked. "Maybe later today. Maybe tomorrow. Her body just needs rest." Lily nodded. "Can I stay with her tonight?" The nurse smiled gently. "We'll make sure you're comfortable." When the nurse left, Lily leaned her head carefully against the bed. For the first time since morning, her eyes closed. Exhaustion finally caught up with her. Back in the waiting area, Victor was still holding the phone when his assistant approached. "Sir, the surgery is halfway through. The doctors say everything is going as expected." Victor nodded. But his thoughts were somewhere else now. "Get me more information," he said quietly. "Everything about the Harper family. Employment, financial history, accident reports. I want to know what happened to Michael." The assistant hesitated slightly. "Yes, sir." "And one more thing," Victor added. "Discreetly." "Of course." As the assistant walked away, Victor leaned back in the chair and looked at the ceiling. For years, he had told himself the past was finished. That regret was useless. That survival meant moving forward, not looking back. But the past had a strange way of waiting. And sometimes it came back through a crying child at a hospital door. Hours passed. In Sarah's room, the afternoon light softened through the window. Lily woke with a small start, her neck stiff from sleeping in the chair. For a second, she looked confused. Then she saw her mother. "Mom?" Sarah's fingers moved slightly. Lily leaned forward quickly. "Mom, it's me. I'm here." Sarah's eyes fluttered open. They were tired and unfocused at first. Then slowly, they found Lily. Relief washed over her face even through the oxygen mask. "Hey, baby," she whispered weakly. Lily's eyes filled instantly. "You scared me." Sarah tried to lift her hand. Lily grabbed it gently and held it close. "I'm sorry," Sarah murmured. "I didn't mean to." "You're in the hospital," Lily said quickly. "They're helping you. And someone paid so you could stay." Sarah frowned slightly. "Paid?" Lily nodded. "The man outside. The one I told you about. He made them help you." Sarah's expression grew confused. "Who?" Before Lily could answer, there was a soft knock on the door. Victor stepped inside. He paused just inside the room, giving Sarah time to see him clearly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah studied his face. The expensive coat. The quiet confidence. The kind of presence that didn't belong in their world. Then her eyes narrowed slightly, because something about him felt familiar. "I'm Victor Romano," he said gently. The room went still. Sarah's breathing slowed. Her gaze sharpened despite the exhaustion. "Romano?" she repeated softly. Victor nodded. "I knew your husband's aunt," he said. "Anna Harper." Sarah's eyes widened, because Anna's name hadn't been spoken in their family in years, and very few people outside their small circle even remembered her. Sarah looked at him again, this time not as a stranger, but as someone connected to a story she had only heard pieces of. "Anna used to talk about you," Sarah whispered. Victor didn't move. "What did she say?" he asked quietly. Sarah held his gaze, and after a long pause, she answered. "She said you were the man who promised to come back, but never did." The words didn't hit Victor like an accusation. They landed heavier than that, because they were true. For a long moment, no one spoke. The quiet hum of the machines filled the room, steady and patient, as if giving him time to answer. Victor took a slow breath. "She had every right to say that," he replied. Sarah watched him carefully. There was no anger in her face, only the cautious look of someone who had lived long enough to know that regret and excuses were not the same thing. "You knew her before I did," Sarah said weakly. "Michael used to talk about you too. Said you helped her once. A long time ago." Victor's eyes lowered. "She helped me," he said. "More than I ever helped her." Lily looked between them, confused but quiet, her small hand still holding her mother's. Sarah shifted slightly against the pillow, the movement taking effort. "She got sick fast," Sarah said. By the time anyone knew how serious it was already too late. Victor nodded slowly. "I know." Sarah studied his face. "If you knew, why didn't you come?" The question was gentle, but it cut deeper than anger ever could. Victor didn't answer right away. He walked a few steps closer, stopping near the end of the bed. "I thought I had time," he said finally. "I was building something. I kept telling myself I'd visit when things slowed down, when I had more to show for it, when I could give her the life she deserved." He swallowed. By the time I went back, she was gone. The room grew quiet again. Sarah's eyes softened, but the pain in them didn't disappear. "She never hated you," Sarah said, "even at the end." Victor looked up. "She didn't?" Sarah shook her head slightly. "She said you were chasing a future. She just wished that future had room for the people who loved you." The words settled heavily between them. Victor nodded once, slowly. "I've been trying to make up for that mistake ever since," he said. Sarah glanced around the private room, the equipment, the quiet comfort that didn't match anything in her life. "Is that what this is?" she asked. "Making up for the past?" Victor didn't hesitate. "This is me not walking away again." Lily looked at him, her expression serious. "You didn't walk away today," she said. Victor met her eyes. "No," he agreed softly. "I didn't." Sarah watched the exchange, something in her expression shifting. "Michael would have liked that," she murmured. Victor's gaze moved back to her. "I'm sorry about him," he said. "I read the report." Sarah's face tightened slightly, the old pain still fresh even after 6 years. "He was working a double shift," she said quietly. "They rushed the job. Safety checks got skipped. The equipment failed." Her voice trembled, but she kept going. "They told me it was an accident." Victor's expression hardened. almost too quickly to notice. "Which company?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "Romano Industrial Construction." The words landed like a weight. Victor went completely still. For a moment, even the machines seemed louder. Sarah noticed his reaction. "I didn't know it was yours back then," she said. "Didn't matter anyway. We didn't have money for lawyers. They gave a small settlement. Said that was the best they could do." Lily looked between them again. "That's where my dad worked," she said quietly. Victor's jaw tightened slightly. Because Romano Industrial Construction was one of his companies. One of dozens. One he hadn't personally reviewed in years. The kind of operation handled by managers, reports, and numbers. Not by faces. Not by families. "I didn't know," he said slowly. Sarah gave a tired half-smile. "People at the top never do." There was no bitterness in her voice. Just truth. Victor walked to the window, his back to them for a moment. Outside, the city looked exactly the same. Busy. Indifferent. Moving forward no matter who it left behind. When he turned back, his voice was quieter. "I'm going to look into what happened," he said. Sarah shook her head slightly. "That won't bring him back." "No," Victor agreed. "But it might make sure it never happens to someone else." Lily spoke up softly. "My dad used to say rich people don't care about workers." Victor looked at her. "What do you think now?" She studied him for a long moment. "I think some don't," she said. "But maybe some just don't know." Victor nodded slowly. "That's fair." The room fell quiet again. Sarah's breathing had grown steadier, but exhaustion was catching up with her. Her eyes began to close. "Get some rest," Victor said gently. Before she drifted off, Sarah spoke one more time. "Victor." "Yes. If you really want to make things right." Her voice faded slightly. "Don't just help us. Fix what broke the system that put us here." Her eyes closed. Victor stood there for a long time after she fell asleep. Lily climbed back onto the chair beside the bed, but her eyes stayed on him. "You look sad," she said. Victor gave a faint smile. "I'm thinking." "About my dad?" "Yes." Lily was quiet for a moment. "He used to say good people aren't the ones who never mess up," she said. "They're the ones who fix things after." Victor looked at her, surprised. "That's very wise." "He told me that when he broke Mom's favorite lamp," Lily said seriously. Victor actually smiled this time. "I'll remember that." His phone vibrated again. A message from his assistant. Full accident file retrieved. Internal safety complaints filed weeks before incident. Ignored by site management. Victor's expression slowly changed. The message continued. Further review suggests cost-cutting measures approved at executive level. Victor stared at the screen. Because those approvals carried his name. Victor did not move for a long time. The glow of the phone screen reflected in his eyes, but he wasn't reading anymore. The words had already settled deep enough. Approved at executive level. His level. Years ago, the request would have come buried in a stack of reports. Budget adjustments. Efficiency recommendations. Project margins tightening. A signature placed quickly, between meetings, between flights, between deals that felt bigger, more urgent. Numbers instead of names. Savings instead of safety. And somewhere inside those numbers had been Michael Harper. Victor slowly lowered the phone. Across the room, Lily was watching him. Children had a way of noticing silence. The kind that meant something heavy was happening. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Victor looked at her. For the first time since walking into the room, there was no control in his expression. I made a mistake, he said quietly. Lily tilted her head. A big one. Yes. She thought about that for a moment, the way children do when they're measuring honesty. My dad said big mistakes need big fixing, she said. Victor nodded slowly. That's exactly right. He stepped closer to the bed, looking at Sarah as she slept. Her face looked calmer now, but the years of struggle were written into the lines around her eyes, the tension that hadn't fully left even in rest. All those years. All that loss. And a part of it traced back to a decision he barely remembered making. Victor walked out into the hallway and called his assistant. I want the full executive board assembled tonight, he said. There was a brief pause on the other end. Tonight, sir? Tonight, Victor repeated. And bring the entire safety audit division. We're reopening every construction site review from the past 10 years. Yes, sir. Victor ended the call. When he returned to the room, Lily had moved closer to the bed again. She was carefully adjusting the blanket around her mother, smoothing it the way she'd probably done 100 times before at home. You take good care of her, Victor said. Lily nodded. She takes care of me too, she said. We just switch when one of us is tired. Victor sat down in the chair across from her. That's how families work. Lily studied him for a moment. Do you have a mom? She asked. Victor hesitated. She passed away a long time ago. Did you take care of her? The question caught him off guard. I should have, he said quietly. Lily seemed to accept that answer without judgment. My mom says love means showing up, she said. Even when it's hard. Victor let the words settle. Showing up. That was the part he had failed at. With Anna. With the past. With people whose lives had been affected by decisions made far away from their reality. His phone vibrated again. Another message. Grandson out of surgery. Condition stable. Recovery in progress. Victor exhaled slowly. Relief washed through him, but it came with a strange weight. One family safe. Another broken years ago. Life didn't balance itself. People had to do that. Back in the room, Sarah stirred slightly. Her eyes opened halfway, still heavy with medication. She noticed Victor sitting there. You're still here, she murmured. Yes. She looked at Lily, then back at him. She told me you paid for everything. Victor nodded. I'm also reviewing Michael's case, he said. Sarah's expression shifted. That was a long time ago. I signed the cost approvals that led to the safety cuts, Victor said plainly. The room went very still. Lily looked between them, sensing the seriousness even if she didn't understand all the words. Sarah watched Victor carefully. You're saying you're responsible? I'm saying the decision traces back to me. There was no defense in his voice. No explanation. No corporate language. Just truth. Sarah took a slow breath. For a moment, it seemed like anger might come. But when she spoke, her voice was tired, not bitter. I spent years being angry at a company, she said. At people I never met. She looked at him. I never thought one of them would come sit in a hospital room and say that. Victor didn't look away. I can't change what happened, he said. But I'm going to take responsibility for it. Publicly. Legally. Financially. And operationally. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. That could cost you a lot. It already did, Victor said quietly. They held each other's gaze. Then Sarah nodded once. Michael would respect that. Lily tugged lightly on Victor's sleeve. Does this mean you're fixing the big mistake? She asked. Yes, he said. She seemed satisfied with that. Good, she said. Because my dad used to say the world only gets better when powerful people decide to care. Victor sat with that sentence longer than anything else. The door opened gently as a nurse stepped in. "Visiting hours are ending soon," she said softly. "Family can stay overnight, but additional visitors will need to return in the morning." Victor stood. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. Lily looked up quickly. "You promise?" He met her eyes. "I promise." As he turned to leave, Sarah spoke again. "Victor." He stopped. "If you're really going to change things, be ready." "Ready for what?" "For people who don't want the truth coming out," she said. "Companies don't like admitting fault. And powerful men usually don't like losing money." Victor gave a faint, steady smile. "I've dealt with powerful men my whole life." Sarah studied him for a moment. Then she said quietly, "This time, you are the powerful man." Victor left the room without answering. Because as he walked down the quiet hospital hallway, his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a report. It was a message from his legal team. Emergency notice. Board members requesting private meeting. Strong objections to safety investigation. Financial exposure risk classified as severe. Victor stopped walking. Because the fight to fix the past had already begun. Victor stood still in the hallway, reading the message again. Strong objections. Financial exposure severe. Private meeting requested. 4 years, those kinds of messages had meant only one thing: protect the company, protect the numbers, contain the damage. But this time, the damage had a face. A man who never came home from work. A woman who carried grief and poverty for 6 years. A little girl who had stood outside a hospital, begging strangers to let her mother breathe. Victor put the phone back into his pocket and kept walking. The boardroom was already full when he arrived that evening. Executives sat stiffly around the long table. Legal advisors had files open. Financial officers avoided eye contact. The moment Victor entered, the room went quiet. One of the senior board members spoke first. "Victor, we need to be clear. Reopening past safety cases exposes the company to massive liability. Lawsuits, settlements, regulatory scrutiny. This could cost hundreds of millions." Another leaned forward. "And admitting executive-level responsibility could damage the entire organization. Investors will panic." Victor took his seat slowly. For a moment, he looked at the faces around the table. Men and women who had built success through caution, strategy, and control. Then he spoke. "A man died because we chose profit over safety." No one interrupted. "He left behind a wife and a child who spent 6 years paying for our decision." A legal advisor cleared his throat. "With respect, the incident was ruled an operational failure at site management level." Victor shook his head. The cost-cutting order came from this table. Silence settled heavily. "We're going to reopen every safety case," Victor continued. "We're going to compensate every affected family fairly. And we're going to rebuild our safety systems from the ground up." The financial officer spoke carefully. "This will hurt the company." Victor met his eyes. "It should." The room shifted uneasily. One board member leaned back. "And if investors pull out?" Victor's voice stayed calm. "Then we rebuild with the ones who believe human lives matter more than quarterly reports." Another executive asked quietly, "And if this destroys your reputation?" Victor didn't hesitate. "I'd rather lose my reputation than live with another family paying for my silence." No one spoke after that. Because for the first time, this wasn't a business decision. It was a moral one. The announcement went public 3 days later. The company admitted executive responsibility. A compensation fund was created. Independent safety oversight was established. The news spread quickly. Analysts argued. Investors reacted. Headlines questioned the move. But something unexpected happened. Workers across multiple sites sent messages of support. Families who had lost loved ones came forward. And for the first time, the company's name was spoken not with fear or anger, but with cautious respect. 1 week later, Victor walked back into the hospital. Lily saw him first. She jumped off the chair and ran toward him. "You came back." Victor smiled. "I told you I would." Sarah was sitting up now, the oxygen removed, color slowly returning to her face. "You look stronger," Victor said. "I feel stronger," she replied. "The doctors say I can go home tomorrow." Lily climbed back beside her. "Mr. Romano fixed the big mistake," she said proudly. Sarah looked at him. "I saw the news." Victor nodded. "It was the right thing to do." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "You know," she said quietly, "for 6 years I prayed for justice. I thought it meant someone paying for what happened." She paused. "But now I think justice is something else." Victor waited. "It's someone finally choosing to care." The words settled gently between them. Lily reached for Victor's hand again. "Mom says God sends help through people," she said. Victor looked at her small fingers holding his. "I think he does," he said softly. There was a moment of quiet. Then Sarah spoke again. "What happens now?" Victor didn't answer immediately. "Now," he said slowly, "you focus on getting healthy." "And after that?" Victor looked at Lily, then back at Sarah. "I've set up a trust fund for Lily's education." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's too much." "It's not enough," Victor said. "And there's a position open in our administrative office. Light work, flexible hours, full medical coverage." Sarah stared at him. "You don't owe us that." Victor shook his head gently. "I'm not paying a debt," he said. "I'm building a future." Lily's voice broke the quiet. "Does this mean we're not alone anymore?" Victor's throat tightened slightly. "No," he said. "You're not." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were different. Not from exhaustion. Not from fear. From relief. Weeks later, on a warm Sunday morning, Lily stood in a small park near their new apartment. She was laughing, running, her hair bright in the sunlight. Sarah sat on a nearby bench, healthier, calmer, watching her daughter with a peace she hadn't felt in years. Victor stood beside her. "She looks happy," he said. "She finally gets to be a child," Sarah replied. They watched Lily for a moment. Then Sarah spoke quietly. "You know, Anna would be proud of you." Victor's voice was soft. "I hope so." Sarah looked at him. "She believed you had a good heart," she said. "You just needed something to bring it back." Victor watched Lily fall, then get up again, laughing. And in that moment, he understood something that years of money and power had never taught him. The emotional peak came quietly, not in a boardroom or a headline, but in a simple truth that settled deep inside him. A man isn't measured by how much he builds, but by how many lives feel safer because he chose to care. Lily ran back toward them and grabbed both their hands. "Come play with me." Victor laughed, a real one this time, and let her pull him forward. Because the past had finally stopped chasing him. And the future, for the first time in years, felt like something worth showing up for. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more stories of faith, love, and second chances, and tell us in the comments which region you're watching from.